morning, class. Today, we'll journey back in time to one of the most misunderstood but transformative periods in world history, which is the Dark Ages. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to first describe the causes, events, and features of the Dark Ages, especially feudalism, the role of the church, and daily medieval life. Second is to appreciate the resilience and adaptability of people during the Dark Ages through group discussion. Third and last is to collaborate with your peers to create a then and now chart, comparing medieval and modern life. Before we begin, let us take a moment to center ourselves in prayer. Please all rise. Amen. For today's attendance check, when I call your name, say light if you're present and dark if you're absent. Let's begin alphabetically. Alright, I think everyone is present and no one is absent. And I am very glad to know that because that goes to show that everyone is excited and prepared for today's new lesson. But before we move forward to our newest lesson, let's recall our previous topic. Let's recall what brought the Roman Empire, one of the greatest empire in history, to its downfall. First question that I'm going to ask is, who can remind us who the last emperor of Western Rome was? That's correct. Now, my second question will be, what year did the Roman Empire fall? Correct answer. Now, for my third and last question, what were some problems that made Rome weak? Alright, very good. You remembered the key ideas. That fall is what leads us directly to today's topic, the Dark Ages. Once again, my dear students, I am very glad that all of you remembered our previous discussion. And I'm glad that we can set the stage right now for our new topic. But before anything else, let's check what you already know. Please take 1/4 sheet of yellow paper and I'll be giving you a 10-item pre-test. This is very short and this is not also graded. It's just to see what we'll explore more deeply today. Alright, pass your papers. Finish or not finish. Thank you, and let's move forward to our motivation or energizer. This energizer is titled Medieval Messenger. To truly get into the mood of the Middle Ages, let's play a quick game called Medieval Messenger. So here are the instructions. First is, each of you is now a messenger from the Dark Ages, carrying an urgent message like the plague is spreading or bandits attack the road. Second is, you're going to whisper your message to your 5 classmates. But beware, one student is the barbarian infiltrator. If you are too loud, they'll capture you. Last is, after a few rounds, we'll see what messages were passed and what confusion or fear spread, just like in real medieval times. Alright everybody, time is up and I am so happy and enjoyed by your performances, everyone. I mean, it's not hard to really play this game, especially that a barbarian infiltrator is at stake. But all of you managed it and I am happy with the results. Thank you for a very interactive and joyful energizer, everyone. You may now take your seat again. But let me ask you, what messages did you hear? Were they clear, confusing, or scary? This is how communication felt in the Dark Ages. Fearful, chaotic, and full of uncertainty. Let's dive into why that happened. Now, I welcome you all to early medieval Europe, a time of castles and cathedrals, of plagues and prayers. This is what we call the Dark Ages. But don't be misled. Yes, it was a time of darkness, but also of light, resilience, and rebirth. Let's travel back together. What were the Dark Ages? The Dark Ages are the period after the fall of Western Rome in 476 AD. It lasted until around 1000 AD, and it declined in culture, trade, and learning. It also fragmented and unstabilized Europe. So after Rome fell, Europe entered a long period of uncertainty. There was no emperor, no strong army, and no stable government. Culture and trade declined, and much of the learning from the Roman age was forgotten. But remember, darkness doesn't mean nothing happened. It means things were hidden. People were surviving, adapting, and slowly rebuilding. Second, the fall of Rome. The fall of Rome was mainly caused by Germanic leader Odoacer, who deposed the last Roman emperor. It also resulted to the collapse of central government, and there were failure of roads, trade, and law. Odoacer, a barbarian leader, overthrew Romulus Augustulus in 476 AD. That moment symbolized the end of Roman dominance. Without Rome's armies, highways became unsafe, cities crumbled, and laws disappeared. The empire that once united Europe was no more, and the people were left vulnerable. Third, barbarian invasions. These barbarians are called Visigoths, Vandals, and the Huns. They destroyed cities and created chaos and fear. These barbarian groups didn't just stroll in. They burned, looted, and displaced entire populations. Fear ruled the land, and the Roman roads fell to disrepair. The cities were emptied, and survival became the priority. Again, survival became the priority. The Roman dream was replaced by fragmentation and fear because of these barbarians and their invasions efforts. Next, let's move forward. The fragmentation of Europe. During the fragmentation of Europe, there was no strong empire, but there were a rise of small kingdoms, new languages, and identities established. So, with no empire, Europe became a chessboard of many kingdoms. These kings ruled over tiny lands and often went to war. Because people lived so far apart, they begin to speak in different ways, giving birth to new languages like Old French, Spanish, and German. Europe's diversity began here. Next is the rise of the Catholic Church. The rise of the Catholic Church resulted in the unification of Europe spiritually. The popes gained power, and missionaries spread Christianity. Now, in the sea of chaos, the Dark Ages, one lighthouse stood tall, which is the Catholic Church. The Church gave people hope, rules to live by, and even education. Popes gained power over kings. Missionaries traveled to convert tribes, spreading the light of Christianity to darkest corners. Next, now we study the role of monasteries. The monasteries, they preserved knowledge. They were centers of healing and also farming. They also promoted literacy. While much was lost, monks saved the day. Inside their quiet monasteries, they copied ancient books by hand, from science to religion. They also ran schools, tended to the sick, and farmed to support communities. In a world of chaos again, monasteries were beacons of learning. Now let's dive into one of the most important terms in the Dark Ages, feudalism. Now what is feudalism all about? It is a system based on land and loyalty. Kings gave land, the nobles protected it, and everyone had duties. With no strong government, people turned to each other for help. Feudalism was born where the system is land equals to power. The king gave lands to the lords protected peasants. Peasants worked the land, and everyone depended on everyone, but nobody was truly free. Now, I will explain to you the feudal pyramid. We have the king on the very top. Next are the nobles, the knights, and the lowest of them all, the peasants. Everyone served the one above. That's why it is called the feudal pyramid. Again, everyone served the one above. Imagine a pyramid. Kings at the top with the most power. Below them, the nobles with land and armies. The knights, brave and armored. And finally, the peasants, who made up 90% of the population at that time. Each level had duties and loyalties. Society was strict and unfair, but it kept order in a wild world. Wild world means here is the Dark Ages. Now let's study their lives. Now we have here the life of nobles and lords. They owned estates. They collected taxes and lived in castles. Nobles were like local kings, or what we call in modern times are the mayors of the cities. Now, these nobles and lords, they owned manors, collected taxes, and led armies. They lived in castles not for luxury, but for protection from raiders and enemies. Now, what are the life of peasants during the Dark Ages? Now, they lived hard lives, bound to the land, and faced hunger and disease. Peasants and serfs lived harsh lives. They worked to sun up to sundown. They had little food, no rights, and couldn't leave their lord's land. Yet, their labor fed all of society. They were poor, but essential. Now, what are the lives of the knights and clergy? The knights were warriors who followed chivalry. The clergy guided faith and learning. Knights trained for battle and followed a code called chivalry: to be brave, protect the weak, and honor your lord. The clergy are like priests and monks. They were teachers and guides. They taught people how to read, how to pray, and how to live. The church was part of every aspect in life, from birth to death. Now we move forward to the end of the Dark Ages. The end of the Dark Ages resulted in growth of trade and towns, the rise of strong kingdoms again, and learning returns. By around 1000 AD, Europe began to rise again. Markets opened, the towns grew, and kings became more powerful. The schools were also reopened. Books were written again, and the church helped preserve and spread knowledge. The stage was set for the High Middle Ages, a brighter chapter. Now, to summarize everything about the Dark Ages, they were declined and also changed. The decline itself resulted to change. So without the decline, without the past, the depressing past, and the challenges during the Dark Ages, there will be no change. There will be no so much change whatsoever in the early medieval Europe. The church and feudalism preserved society, and it was a stage for revival. The Dark Ages again were tough, but also full of survival and strength. Despite plagues, wars, and collapse, people adapted. The church guided them, and feudalism kept order. And soon, Europe would rise again. Now let's move forward to our abstraction activity, which is now the then and now chart. Let's bring history into our world. In groups of 3 or 4, fill out a then and now chart comparing medieval life with modern life. In 4 areas specifically, education, power, faith, and society. I will give you 10 minutes, then we'll hear some of your comparisons. Now go to your group and work effectively. Go. Alright, time's up. Pass your papers, and I will now hear from each group's representative in the front to what they collected from your group mates about your then and now chart. Alright, thank you so much for that interactive and wonderful uh, collaboration of thoughts and ideas, your sharing of your insights, and everything that you've worked hard, and the thoughts that you put in the chart. I applaud everyone, and you will get good grades for this activity.
And now for today's activity, we will have a short debate as a formative assessment of our lesson on the Dark Ages. The motion is, the Dark Ages was truly a period of decline and backwardness. You will be divided into two teams, the affirmative side which agrees on the motion, and the negative side which disagrees. Each team will have two speakers. The first speaker will present your main argument, and the second will provide rebuttals and defend your position. You will have 10 minutes to prepare, and each speaker will be given 2 minutes to speak. During the debate, make sure to use historical facts and ideas we've discussed. I will be assigning you content, accuracy, logical reasoning, and clarity of delivery. Let's begin with theme assignments.
Now, before we end the class and before I dismiss you, I will give you an assignment. A day in my dark age life. That's your assignment's title. For assignment, write a short narrative from the perspective of someone living in the Dark Ages. You can be a peasant, knight, noble, or monk, or anyone else you would like to experience or to showcase. You may include in your assignment where you live, what you do, and what you fear or hope for. Write at least one paragraph and don't forget to be creative. Pass it to me on our next meeting and I will surely look at them with careful thought. Alright, so today we explored a world full of darkness and light. A world that struggled, fell, survived, and began to rise again. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dark Ages, and let's remember, even in the darkest times, people found a way forward. Thank you, class. And you are now dismissed.